Good afternoon, and welcome back to AIADA's AutoTalk. I'm your host, Rachel Soleimani. Anyone who is registered for today's program will be receiving a copy by early next week. And if you have any questions, be sure to enter them into the Q&A bar at the lower right-hand side of your interface. Joining us today, we have Doug Austin, founder and chairman of StrategicSource. Doug, I'll let you take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Rachel, and thank you to AIADA. Welcome, everybody. Glad you joined us today. The topic of today's session is really tips to scale and grow your group effectively. We know there's a lot of activity out there in the marketplace. Dealers are acquiring other dealers, and the question really is, how do you do that effectively? How do you realize economies of scale? And the other opportunity is really, how do I kind of grow my war chest so I can acquire more dealerships, and grow my group. So what we'll explore today is some strategies to help you not only be more effective, but then to grow your opportunities to scale even further. We'll talk about opportunities for growth, the acquisition and scale, centralizing the procurement function because that's our specialty, options to centralize procurement, building that war chest, and how StrategicSource might be able to help in those efforts. Dealers, based on the information that I've acquired over the years, we work with a number of broker dealers, and the research I've done, there's probably 5 reasons: market expansion, economies of scale, incentives, real estate, brand diversification, assets, used car inventory, consolidation trend, and competitive advantage. What I want to speak to today is really something that I think that we can influence, and that's economies of scale. We all know the dealers finance their growth through banks, seller financing, equity, SBA loans, manufacturers, some combination, but also working capital, internal profits. And I want to speak to how that might be possible within the procurement space. We also know through our 25 years of experience that internal working capital can be a fund for growth. I did some research on AI as well as looked at our own internal research, and I found it interesting that AI wasn't that far off. And these are AI numbers, and I'll give you some of the StrategicSource numbers here in a couple of minutes. But the suggestion is that, a 3 to 5 rooftop operation today can throw off between $250,000 and $750,000 in cost savings. 6 to 10 rooftops between $500,000 and $1.5 million, and so on. 20 plus rooftops, $2 million to $8 million a year. I've seen that happen. So, not sure where AI gets a lot of this information, but I'll show you where we get it in the back. But there are very real opportunities to develop a war chest, if you will, by driving new efficiencies into your dealership operation and centralizing. This is our data. This is StrategicSource's data. We know that 5% of dealer revenues, and if you look at revenues here on top, a $100 million group will spend 5% pretty consistently, 5% on services and supplies. So that's about $5 million. We know that the cost savings opportunity is about 25%. So that throws off about $1,250,000 a year. If you look at that over 3 years, that's $3,750,000 on just $100 million dealership. These numbers are real. There's a group called Aberdeen Group out there that is a purchasing centric group that says if you centralize procurement, you'll pull in about 25%. Our lowest number back in the meltdown in 2008 was 21%, and our most recent number in 2024 was 33%. So this 25% is certainly a realistic number, and it is supported by not only our data at StrategicSource, but also through the research that I've seen with through AI. So, why this matters? You can absolutely fund your growth through internally operated funds if you drive new efficiencies into the business. So let's talk about growth for a little bit. Um, let's first talk about scale, definition of scale. We hear economies of scale every day. You see it in the Wall Street Journal, but it really is talking about a cost advantage that happens, as a business produces more of a good or service. The benefits of scale, certainly, we understand is a lower cost per unit, increased efficiency, greater leverage, purchasing power, resource allocations. We can spread resources across a larger platform and risk reduction. So that's really what we're looking for in scale. If we think about centralization, and I've been fortunate in my career. In fact, I was just talking to somebody about an hour and a half ago about this. I've had the opportunity to both centralize procurement groups, and when I was working for a large airline in my 30s and early 40s, I had an opportunity to decentralize procurement. And I can tell you that centralizing procurement is much more effective, much more efficient, and will bring dollars back to the bottom line. So the benefits, again, the org structure, where a single leader of a small group of leaders make decisions that flow down. That's centralization, and it doesn't have to be necessarily staffed with dedicated full-time equivalents either to be centralized. You can operate a centralized procurement group in a decentralized environment, and I'll explain that in a bit. So some of the benefits of centralization: it's clear leadership, efficiency, reduce conflict, streamline information, improve coordination, and enhanced security. We look at As we look at auto dealers and centralizing, what are some of the benefits there? Now, whether you're talking about HR or marketing or procurement or IT, I think these statements are true in any centralization effort. We're going to reduce headcount duplication, improve controls. We'll have more consistent processes, excuse me, lower costs. We're going to get better purchasing leverage, new efficiencies, unified branding, and improved profitability. So again, centralizing, realizing those economies of scale can throw off a lot of benefits. So which departments should a dealership consider when they centralize? Well, certainly accounting, office, and payables, that makes sense. I remember being in a dealership group in Jacksonville a few years ago, had 9 stores. I walked into their payables office. It was one desk, one person. It was highly efficient, very well organized. And I think we can all think of other dealership groups where it looks like chaos in some of those payables departments. But that was a case where they had centralized the accounting, the payables, and it worked very well. Procurement can certainly be centralized: marketing, BDC, internet, warranty, HR, payroll, IT, titles, DMV, inventory management on the used car side, all of which many dealers centralize today. A lot of I can say there's a handful of large public groups that centralize procurement. They definitely have a competitive advantage over those that don't. So let's look at departments that should not be centralized in the dealership space. Again, based on my research, sales, desking, F&I, the customer experience service departments. Although, again, centralizing parts and supplies makes sense, but managing the service department is probably left better to the local store. So some departments should reside closer to the customer, and for that reason, uh, wouldn't be a good candidate for centralization. So let's talk about centralizing procurement. That's something I have a lot of experience in. Our group does. I've had it in my professional career even before I started this business 25 years ago. So I speak from some experience here. Centralizing can be a smart move. And what we've seen is centralization of procurement should really happen at any dealership, whether you're two stores or three or four or more. We typically see this groups that have four or more stores that have a desire to centralize, and we know that we can save hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions a year, just based on spend. But we're going to see greater purchasing spend and leverage. That's kind of a no-brainer. But opportunity is that there are fewer suppliers. We can certainly reduce inventory. We can streamline the onboarding of new stores. We had a large group at one point that would just pick up the phone and say, Doug, we're adding a store at such and such a location. Just bolt on our preferred suppliers there and get new equipment over. And it can be pretty seamless. Again, one of the benefits is time. We free up the GM and the service and parts managers. Certainly greater profitability. It's a growth engine. Improved pricing, fewer invoices, more predictable costs, fewer suppliers. And I think certainly the opportunity is to reduce fraud as well. Not all suppliers should be centralized. So we need kind of a considerate approach, a thoughtful approach when we look at our supply base. The thing that I would say is that there are national suppliers out there that we all know. We know them by name in the office supply, auto parts shop, credit card, insurance, and DMS. There are regional suppliers that handle printed products, uniforms, IT services that might operate in a 5-state, 6-state area. And there are local suppliers, towing, HVAC, landscaping, facilities, janitorial services. These are probably not candidates, the local side, for centralization. So if a big group, is operating in 5 states, it's going to be unlikely that we could find one towing company that can support those 5 states. And I think you all see that. But as we look at different expense categories, regional suppliers and national suppliers are probably very real opportunities. Keep in mind that most dealers are spending money today in about 130 expense categories, different categories, from office supplies to auto parts to uniforms and window washing. So, but it's good to think about your supply base in 3 buckets: national, regional, and local. What are the savings potentials with centralized procurement? Again, there are volume-based discounts. There are SKU rationalization, so we can consolidate suppliers, rationalize the products that we sell, whether it's aftermarket parts or accessories. And then we're going to have improved inventory management. When you look at all those opportunities, um, again, I mentioned earlier, we have seen the lowest ever from centralization was 21%. And most recently in 2024, a 33% savings. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means measuring the price you paid for that pencil yesterday, which was $1, and today is 85 cents. That's a 15% difference. So what we're talking about here is hard dollar savings, not soft dollar savings. So what kind of savings can be achieved? Again, we're looking at labor, lower compliance issues, and enhanced supplier management. But there are a number of factors that add up to the significant cost savings that comes from centralization. So the question is then, should we centralize procurement, and do we take advantage of our should say scale? And the answer is, I think you should. We saw this chart before. Revenues times spend times the opportunity can generate some pretty significant cost savings annually. And when you start to look at this over 3 years, the numbers are pretty compelling. So, what's a potential ROI for procurement centralization? Well, small 3 to 5 rooftop groups could throw off potentially 150 to 360 a year. 10 to 20 rooftops, a million to 2.4, and 20 plus 2.5 to 6 million a year. I can tell you that we worked with a 50 store group in the East just a few years ago. And we pulled in about $8 million in 10 months. And we were surprised at that, but pretty significant. So if, if you've got a group that's growing, your 3+, 4+ stores, you absolutely need to consider centralizing procurement because the benefits are really there. So yes, centralized procurement. Expense management is not a project. It should be a discipline within your organization. It's not a once or twice a year initiative that you delegate to somebody who's unfamiliar with it. It should be part of your financial department's ongoing obligations. The cost savings, the new profits are significant. And I would tell you again, public groups are centralized. You know the names of those groups. They have centralized procurement teams from 4 to, I think the last count I had with the second largest group is 10 full-time equivalents, but you can prove the ROI. They have a competitive advantage because they're taking advantage of their scale, they're taking advantage of their size and their spend. So what are the options? Well, you've got 72 expense categories that you've got to quote no matter what business you're in. If you're a dealer, of course, we're talking to dealers today, you've got another 56 expense categories to manage. And if you own real estate, which most dealers do, you've got another 16 expense categories to manage. So there is a large scope out there. And your options are really do nothing, do what you're doing today, or you can build a procurement department, or you can outsource procurement to a third party. Now, you can go to a full service provider like our group, you can go to consultants, or you can use a contingency firm, but all three can bring benefit. The question is, how quickly are you looking for that? If you want to build a procurement group yourself, here's an idea of what those salaries look like. I just interviewed somebody, a mid-level manager here in the Midwest, that's looking for about 140 at a manager level. So I know these rates are pretty accurate. But it's costly to build a purchasing department, but again, the ROI can be pretty significant. So you can see here what you need in a 1 to 5 store group, 6 to 15, or enterprise group of 16 or more. You have one-time costs, and then you're going to have recurring costs for a procurement department. But again, you've got the ability to measure that ROI. So, once you have a one-time setup cost, the first year cost, then your annual run rate thereafter, this will give you a pretty good idea of what the costs are going to be. So How do we build that war chest for growth? How do we fund our own acquisitions? Well, that's pretty straightforward. Centralized procurement, then realize the cost savings and finance your growth. We want to identify savings, we want to save, we want to prove it through an audit, and then we want to invest. That's the internal working capital. What I'm suggesting, an account to capture your cost savings, move those dollars over there. And then the question is, where do you go with the investment? Is it just new profits? Put it in securities, acquisitions, real estate, equipment, or expansion. But the dollars are there. So with procurement centralization, you're going to go from waste and overspending to control, inefficiency to efficiency, a bloated supplier base to an optimized, consolidated supplier base, diseconomies of scale to economies of scale, thin profits to growing profits, limited ability to invest to building a war chest. So I'm bullish on this. I think it's a great opportunity. If you're interested, StrategicSource can help. We have a profit improvement program, and then we have a strategic procurement development program as well. So we can help you build a purchasing department if that's what you're after. Otherwise, we can do it for you as well. We've got a large team, been supporting dealers since 2000. We're based in Minnesota. Don't hold that against me, please. And we are veteran owned. So we can help you with that. If you want more information, you can download the presentation by clicking on this QR code. If you're interested in a best practice assessment, meaning if you want to find out if you're ready for this, what gaps you have, click on this QR code. You can click on both of them, and we'll send you an assessment. We'll help you complete that and then graph it and show you in a pictorial format what that looks like. In the meantime, get a hold of Chris Austin. He's our Chief Revenue Officer, 612-386-3898, or email him at caustin@strategicsource.com. So, thank you very much for attending today. If there's any questions out there, be happy to address them now.
Doug, thanks so much for joining us today. Anyone that has questions, you can email them to me and I will pass them along to Doug, or you can reach out to Chris Austin at the slide before. Again, we'll be sending you a copy of this webinar by early next week. Doug, again, we always appreciate your insights, and this was some great end of year, beginning of 2026 information. So thank you.
Happy to do it.
Join us back here for our last webinar of the year, Thursday, December 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern, as Cox senior economist Charlie Chesborough returns for his quarterly market update. For more information about AIADA, visit aiada.org. Thanks for tuning in and have a great day, everyone.